Steven Stamp Lax, indoor lacrosse editor and author. Another exciting week of lacrosse, and unfortunately, you were a little under the weather, and I've been busy trying to make a bunch of components, so we did not get this video out that early. But how are you feeling?
I'm doing okay. I'll tell you the kind of week it's been for me, why we didn't record. So, Carrie, my wife, my wonderful, wonderful wife, was sick on the weekend. And then I was sick and kind of hung around. I thought it was getting better. And then Wednesday, yesterday, the day before were recording, I had a horrible headache, just totally down for the count, or not for the count, but down. And I had to go in though. Had to go into town to Peterborough, go 45 minutes away from us because we had to do. Carrie had an appointment. We had some things we had to get for my father-in-law who lives with us. Absolute blessing having him here. That's a whole nother story. But had to get some things. So we go into town, and one of the things I went was to get a curtain and a curtain rod for his room, the doorway to keep the heating. Because he likes it a lot warmer than we do. So he has a little electric fireplace in his room. So I'm putting a curtain up. So I reach in to get the curtain out of the little box that they're stored in, and I get a cardboard cut on my finger, like a paper cut, but it's the cardboard that wraps around the curtains a little thicker. Holy cow, it hurt. I just left. I had my coat and glasses and stuff sitting there on a shelf, and I just left them and went and like because it's bleeding. You know how these things bleed, right? So I put my finger on the end, and I head over to find somebody from the store. And one of the women who works there, super nice, was like, "Are you okay?" I was like, "Oh, I guess I was kind of loud." Eh? This was like from a department over. I was like, "Yeah, I got a paper cut from." And she's like, "Curtains?" I was like, "Yes." It's like that happens to me all the time. So she takes me up to the front counter, pulls out the first aid kit. She's like, there's no band-aids in here. I can get you band-aids from the back. Here's she gave me a bit of paper towel to put on just to keep some pressure on. You can staunch the bleeding, whatever. So we go to the back of the store, I go in, wash my hands, and come out. She's giving me a couple of band-aids. I go over and put them on. So the thing, I there are way worse things, obviously, than a paper cut, but you all know how much they can hurt. And this was a pretty thick one with the cardboard, and it's on this finger right on the end. So I make my living typing. This is the finger I use on my computer for ID, for the little ID button on the top. So if I want to get in, I have to put in passwords and things. It's also tend to use it for scrolling on the trackpad. I have to use other fingers now because it won't. Because I have to have the band-aid on because it hurts a lot if I type certain letters without the band-aid on. So I put the band-aid on so I can type because I do a lot of typing, and then it won't. The trackpad doesn't notice. So I have to use other fingers. That's kind of week it's been. So that's why we're a little late, but we have some great stuff
And
to get to, and we're
that's
yeah.
one of those
Go ahead.
things, really, when you think about the like the trackpad. That's
Yeah.
something. It's not a movement you do all the time. So yeah, I know exactly what you're talking about. My one
Hmm.
finger only does this. It doesn't go straight. So
Oh, right.
it doesn't pick up on stuff a lot because it doesn't have like the same blood flow and everything else. So I can't use it
Okay.
for a lot of touch screen things. So I have to use my middle
Okay.
finger, and it's always funny when I point too. Some people always think I'm flipping them off, but it's actually just because that my right pointer finger. So like if I point, I'm actually like hooking over. So I'm like, hey you.
My high school basketball coach had his fingers were pretty messed up because in college he was when he was a freshman in college he was some of the guys on his team were like chasing him to they were going to put him through some hazing or whatever, right? A little intro to the team, and he ran away from them from them, and for some reason, he like dove through a doorway, like a window in a door, and it was one of those doors that was reinforced with like the chicken wire or the wire mesh, and he like broke and just destroyed a bunch of his fingers. He could still play volleyball and basketball really well, but his fingers were all like crooked and pointing all different directions and stuff. And he would literally say, like, okay, let's go to that basket over there. And we'd be like, Whip, we have no idea which basket you're pointing at. Can you just like make a fist and point or something? But yeah, no, it was incredible. You should see him pass a volleyball with it. It's remarkable the way people adjust to things. He was a terrific player. Um,
Yeah,
but yeah,
it's
anyway,
an uncommon, an uncommon individual to tie into these uncommon highlights that we've got coming up. So this is one
yeah.
actually we've got. It starts with Chad Tutton down in the defensive zone getting the rebound.
Mhm. Yeah, and Chad Tutton, I mean, he's a very good defender. Philly's had a lot of trouble on defense, honestly, for a few years. But Zach Higgins faces so much. But Tutton comes up, plays him. He's such a gritty player. He's also quite talented. He's played offensive shifts, certainly for the Peterborough Lakers in the summers. You can see he's number 12. He stayed up in the offensive zone. There's a shot. Matt Vince makes the save, and the ball sits there in the crease, and he sees where it is before the Buffalo defender sees it. So Tutton goes to dive for it. He dives in, shoves the ball into the net. The the ref nearby immediately waves it off, and you can see batting motion, batting motion. So if you're not familiar with the rule is you can go into the crease to get the ball. You can pick it up and bring it out. You can pick it up and put it into the net. You can't just bat it in. You have to possess it in the mesh of your stick. Don't show the part yet where he quite goes. Yeah, there's the pause. Okay, there's the ball in the crease. Great pause. He sees it. He's going after it. When you saw from the other angle, as you're looking past Paul Dawson, he's blocking the view, and the refs there. It looks like he just bats it in. And guys do that all the time, and then they complain when it's waved off. And I've never understood that. Like, it's a pretty well-known rule at this point that you have to have. It has to go into the mesh of your stick. You have to possess the ball, and guys will bat it in with the end of the stick, just poke it in, right? So in this one, that's what it looked like Tutton did. And guys always, the other thing guys do is they score a goal, it gets waved off, and they come off throwing the little, throw the challenge flag signal to their coach. And I don't even know if Tutton did that, but let's roll this now and watch the play. And this is why, if he did, he did. And this is why, look at that. He scoops it up and then just goes with the shovel, just basically shoves it in. There, as far as I know, and obviously based on the result here, there's no rule that you can't just stick the ball into the net. You can't be touching the crease. He's not. His feet were clear. You have to possess it in the stick, the mesh of the stick. He does, and he just shovels it in. It actually, when you watch it enough times, you can see it actually comes out of the stick a bit around the goal line. It may still actually be in the stick when the stick goes over. You see, it's coming out right there. It goes over. It may or may not be in the stick when it crosses the line. At this angle, you can't tell exactly. But what a great heads up play by Chad Tutton. Great challenge by Paul Day. I'm sure that's another one where the iPad on the bench and the assistant coach was really helpful to say, "Hey, that's a good goal." And it was a pretty quick challenge. Once they see this, that's clearly a good goal. I love this. It's an uncommon play because you just don't see a guy, and there's Todd LeBranch making the call. You you just don't see a guy shoveling the ball in like this with the head of the stick going right in with the ball. And it was terrific. I just thought it was great.
No, it was great, and it's funny because you actually are the one who taught me that rule a few weeks ago when we looked at the Hogarth goal, and so I'll clip that in here. But yeah, the that was the first time I had actually learned the rule because I didn't know it, why everybody was making such a big deal about the play, and then it was like, okay, so now with this one, and then to hear the ref as soon as he called it as no, it was a good goal because it was in his stick. I was like, oh yeah, that makes perfect sense.
There was another play actually during the week, in an earlier game with the Rochester game where Matt Gilray, was it last week, where Matt Gilray scored a transition goal and it was waved off. And you're like, oh, I wonder why. He was clearly out of the crease. And then you see Ethan O'Connor, who's behind the net, and he went into the crease. You see the replay, and he's stepping along, sidestepping along the back of the crease, and his feet both go on. The shoes just onto the crease at the back of the back line of it, and then he comes out, and his left foot comes out and establishes back on the turf. But meanwhile, Gilray's taking the shot, and instead of his right foot coming straight down out of the crease, which would have reestablished him outside the crease, he kind of celebrates and his foot stays up a little bit. The ball goes in while he hasn't touched down yet. So it's no goal because he hadn't touched down. And this is one that happened a few years ago where I actually wrote in my column about it was Todd LeBranch again. In fact, was refing that we saw in the Tutton clip, and there was a shot. New England comes in at the time. New England on Saskatchewan, and I think it was Colton Watkinson takes a shot on a breakaway, hits the goalie, stops. He runs through the crease, runs out the back of the crease. Ball trickles in. Todd LeBranch goes to watch the replay and review it, and you see quite clearly Watkinson's foot coming down outside the crease. But LeBranch comes out and says no goal, hadn't reestablished. And I was like, so I wrote in my story, wow, he got it wrong. I can't believe it. Like, it's so clear his foot is outside the crease. I got an email from the director of lacrosse operations at there, the vice president of lacrosse operations for the league, Brian Lemon, saying, "Hey, da da da, just trying to. Oh, by the way, about the Watkinson thing, you're wrong." So I immediately were back, right back and say, "Why? His foot's outside." So we have a call. We actually recorded a call. I was doing my podcast for NLL at the time, and we recorded a special episode to discuss it because it wasn't in the rule book. Because I read the rule book just to double check. Again, I read the rule book fairly often. Probably, I'm a pretty big rule book nerd. So I read it, and it said you have to reestablish your, yeah, outside the crease. And I said he did, and it turns out you have to have both feet. If both feet were in the crease, both feet have to reestablish outside the crease. It did not say that in the rule book. Now, if you've paused and gone to look it up, it does say that now after that play, but it was in the they have officials notes, like they have a ref's notebook or whatever they go through to adjust to things during the season, and that was one that was in their message they send out to the officials, and they've gone over, is has to be both feet, it's not just 1 foot. So the call was correct. Todd Branch nailed it, and then for the next season you can go back and you can see it was changed in the rule book. So I find all this stuff fascinating, all the minutiae of the rules.
Yeah, no, it is because especially when things change like that. So me, I remember it was Brett Hall that changed the crease rule for hockey to it was
Yeah.
if you interfered with the goalie. But that
Hmm.
was they actually made the call, stuck with the call, and then changed the rule. Like, oh wait, no, this was it the whole time. And I was like,
Yeah,
I was a huge Brett Hall fan at the time. I loved he played with the soft flex stick. I just loved the finesse and the way he played. So I mean, for me,
yeah.
I was like, yeah, that's a cool goal, but that still should not have counted. And Hasek, that's why he started
Absolutely
putting his
should not
gear
have
back
counted.
on. He was like, okay, let's go, and they were like, no, double overtime. We've had enough of this. We're done. And there's the new
Yeah,
rule.
yeah. That was pretty funny. Oh, this is the rule. But it wasn't the rule. Well, it should have been the rule.
It should have been, and it is
Whatever.
now.
Yeah, it's only the championship, only the Stanley Cup on the line. Oh my goodness. I'll tell you, I don't live, we both don't live too far from Buffalo, and Sabres fans are still not over that. I don't blame them.
The Uncommon highlight brought to you by Uncommon Fit. Check out, we've got a link in the description. Talk to Jamie Plunkett. We've got contact info, and you can find like that Red Oaks jersey was on there. I did link it in the Instagram, but if
Yeah.
anybody is interested in that or a lot of these retro jerseys, they do offer them for sale. So huge shout out to Jamie at Uncommon Fit.
Yeah, that is a look at the Mega Man jersey. Who I'm wearing this one because the Alice Robeski tournament is coming up in a couple of weeks. Very exciting. It's in Radotin, part of Prague, Czech Republic. It is the most exquisite lacrosse venue you will see. I think there's a lot of great lacrosse venues. I could name a bunch of venues I love, but probably the two that are just the most like heaven for a lacrosse person are the Field House in Onondaga, which I am taking you to, Greg. You have to see it. And the Lacrosse Club Radotin, nestled in the community of Radotin in Prague, an outdoor rink, and it is spectacular. And it is a great tournament. There's the E-Box, She-Box, which is not a tournament. It's a series of international invitation games. And I get told off for that all the time, calling it a tournament. I think they're tournaments, but whatever. They're just gatherings of national teams. And then the Robeski, which is club teams. It is the model for the Laxnai and for the Northeast Invitational and for other great tournaments happening in on the east, on the North American side. And this is a Mega Man jersey worn by a team that was the Boston Mega Men. Now it's more just like East Coast guys, a lot of New York guys, Philly guys, whatever. Um, Terrific team that goes and plays in the Rabeski, and a lot of fun, including one of their players over the years, Spicy Pete Saya. And he's called Spicy Pete because he owns a spice company, which is pretty cool, I think. I had Spicy Pete calling games with me at the Rebeski a couple of years ago. He was really good. He came up. I get people who jump in and do color commentary with me when I'm calling games. He jumped in. He was really good. It was really fun. He knows the game. He's a smart guy, really well spoken. So he did a couple games. I'm like, hey, come back and do the final with me. He's like, great, because they didn't make it. So he's like, once I get over that, I'll be fine. So he comes to call it with me. Well, one of the hallmarks of the AHM and Czech Republic in general is they have very good, very inexpensive beer. Pete may have had some between the previous game he did with me and the championship game, and it got a little sloppy. in the final. he just he's a great guy. It was fun. It was funny, but it was not the ideal color commentary collaboration. We had a pizza delivered during that game.
I have been on a couple of those. I know we have
Yeah,
done them at the NABLL. The first time we went, we only had two guys doing it, and by the end of
yeah,
it, guys were buying them shots, and yeah. So
yeah,
I've definitely been a part of those. They are interesting,
yeah,
especially if you're trying to keep it running and the way it's
yeah,
supposed to be operated. It's not always
yeah.
the most fun being on the opposite side of that.
For the record, the pizza it was not anything to do with me. Pete got it arranged, and pizza came up, and I never got any because we couldn't eat during the game because it's
You
so
can't eat
exciting.
while
It's
you're
all happening
talking,
so
but
fast.
yeah.
You can't eat while you're calling the game. And then at the end of the game, I go down. Had some things to do for the post game ceremonies and stuff. I went downstairs, yada yada. Pizza's long gone. I never got any, and I hear it was really good. I don't know. I'm not sure if Pete even got much, but
No pizza left
I
for you
have
guys.
right? I know Pete has been back with me for some games. Um, it's funny. Box Lacrosse Breakdown is another video show, a series on YouTube with Aaron Forster, who's a former first round NLL draft pick. He coaches at Everest Academy in the Toronto area, and a terrific guy, really good player. He is currently on whose roster is he on? Um, I'm not sure. Yeah, I know he was on the Toronto Rock practice squad and played some games with them. He was drafted by New England in the pre-Albany stage. And anyway, perfect player. He's doing some breakdown. He does some really neat breakdown stuff. And he's doing one just went up recently of last year's Alice Robesky Memorial Final, which he said, when he's been sharing some New Zealand or some some Czech box league, some national box cross league, which is Czech and several countries around it, clips and doing breakdowns. And he said, as soon as he started doing that, everyone's like, you've got to watch the 2023 AHM final. It's one of the best games ever. It's crazy. It was amazing. I had the pleasure of calling that game with Garrett Gosshorn, who was a fantastic announcer as well, and was playing in the tournament, was one of the better teams, the Alberta Warriors. Anyway, we're calling that game, and it was incredible. Went down to the final minutes, and Aaron's watching. I haven't had a chance to watch the whole thing yet. I know he's just getting it ready to roll. He's going to watch it. So it'll be fun to see what he does with that. But that was an incredible game where Zach Kerrigan, who people may have heard of now, I hadn't even heard of him that much before that tournament, if at all. And he scored like 19 goals in that tournament, including 5 in that final game for the Nova Scotia Privateers. We wore the jersey. I wore the jersey earlier in this series. Amazing game. He wound up then in the summer playing for the Brooklyn Merchant Senior B team and Brooklyn Lacrosse Club in Major Series, and was one of the top scorers on both of those teams. Had an incredible summer. Went to training camp with the Halifax Thunderbirds. Didn't quite make the club. I think he'll be in the NLL in the next year or two. And I totally lost the thread of where we were going with this, but yeah, great Mega Men jersey. Great shout out to um, Jamie Plunkett and Uncommon Fit. And it's not that uncommon for me to lose the thread,
No,
but
and
Uncommon Fit keeps the thread on their jerseys. How's that for
yes,
pulling it back together?
I like it, and that's a play on most of the Boston area. They were the Minutemen and stuff. So like whenever we played out
Oh,
in Boston, everybody
right.
was the Minutemen. So as soon as you said that they were the Boston area, I was like, oh yeah, because we played like the junior Minutemen, and then yeah, it's a cool thing, especially to kind of tie together with Boston. And now we'll go on to this next game with this Robert Church goal that you had sent to check out, and it was funny. So
Yeah,
I had seen the other one and I was like, there was no challenge on that. What is he talking about? Then I saw this one, and actually, the first time I recorded it, I said I was like, you could tell the ref did not call it a goal at all. I thought it was a beautiful goal,
yeah.
but the close ref was like, I didn't see it.
Yeah, and this is again Todd LeBranch. I think they kept the same crew because Philly played this Thursday game against Saskatchewan and then the Saturday game against Buffalo. I think they kept the same crew there. So Church is going to get the ball. It's a Saskatchewan power play, and obviously a critical game for these guys. And Church is going to get the ball and drive to the net. Here he goes, comes in, little jump, tucks it in. Todd LeBranch is the near ref. He's the one off to your left. And he's just looking back and forth, no call. You just saw Brent Cologne come walking past to talk. There they are. Brent Cologne on the right. He's putting his hands up a little bit, and Todd's like, I don't know. So here's the call, right beside each other. And I think it's really funny. And it's absolutely the right call. For people who are saying, oh, what the heck are they doing? It's absolutely the right call. You each make your call. So Brent Cologne says, yep, that's a goal. Todd LeBranch does the wipeout signal. I think the funniest part is that Brent puts the hands up first and then Todd does it just after. So it looks like he's saying, no, no. It looks like a little comedy routine, but it's the right thing. They do both make the same call. You're just not used to seeing them standing beside each other when they do it because they came and had the conversation. Usually the one guy throws his hands up on the one side of the floor, the other guy waves off on the other side of the floor. But because LeBranch didn't seem to make a call, because if he didn't, I'm not sure. I think he didn't think the ball actually went in the net because at the end he's going to say, "Yeah, the ball went in the net, so we have a good goal." But it was funny. But you can see Brent Colombe does point up to the jumbotron, like, "Yeah, we're going to look at a replay." And but Church, you can see he's outside the crease, tucks it over Higgins' shoulder. That's a great goal. It gets in just before the foot comes down. That's a good goal. Great effort here by Zach Higgins. Look at him coming up to try and get this. And that's a save he makes pretty often. But I just thought I just found this really funny um, when this call was made. And it also is nice that they obviously got the right call.
Yeah, no, they made the right call, and I love the replay effect, just being able to challenge it like that because, like you said, I don't think LeBranch saw it. I don't think he saw the ball go in the
Yeah.
net. He probably did see his feet, but he's not sure when. He steps in immediately afterwards, so it could have been that.
Yeah. And the thing, in case I didn't explain it clearly, the reasoning behind it is if the two officials have opposing calls, it goes to an automatic review. Nobody has to challenge it; just goes to the automatic review and is determined whether it's a goal or not. So that's why it's the right call that they go to the review, and that's why they both put their calls up or indicated their calls to show that they had the offsetting calls. And it's funny because there was one a couple weeks ago. I remember watching the game, and the one thing I didn't know, and the announcers didn't know either, was if there's no clear evidence, because if a coach throws the challenge flag, it has to be clear evidence of a goal or a non-goal to overturn the call. If there's no call on the floor, no set call, if there's two different calls, what the heck? What is the solution? And they actually checked, and it's in that case, it's the head official,
I
the crew
actually
chief.
That happened not that long ago. I'm trying to remember
Yeah,
which game,
yeah,
but
that
they
was
said
just a
it
few
was
weeks ago.
yeah, they said it was inconclusive evidence, and it was the rush again, I believe, actually, and it was
Could have been. I don't
inconclusive
remember.
evidence. So the call on the field stand of a no goal, I do remember that it was a no
But the
goal.
crew chief call, because there were two different calls again. So
Yes, so it
yeah,
stays with the crew chief call. That's right. But yeah,
yeah,
it is. It's funny how those little rules that most people don't know, and that's the only way you learn it is when you see something like that, and you're like, oh,
yeah.
all right, I'll remember that one from now on. But especially the fans that are newer to the game, you learn a lot of these little ones. You're sitting there and you don't always know what's going on, and the PA guys are notoriously famous
Yeah.
for leaving out information like that. They're great hype guys, but when it comes to trying to explain the intricacies and the rules,
Yeah.
it's yeah.
The other one that gets people is late in the game, less than 5 minutes to play. There's there are penalties called on each team, a major on one team and a minor on the other. So how do you do it? Because you can't, you don't have the time to run the 5 minutes. Because normally in that situation, they both go to the box, and the after 2 minutes, if there's no other penalties, that the player with the minor is released, and the other team gets a 3-minute power play. So, and the funny thing is, I mean, like I said, I read the rule book a lot, and I had this specific thing happen at an arena lacrosse league game I was calling. This was a few years ago, and the refs get together and they're talking about it. And they're discussing it with the announcer, and the guy doing the scoring. He didn't know the rule. I mean, they're all sorting it out, but I had read it, and I said, okay, so here's what happens: you put up 3 minutes for power play on the team in favor of the team that took the minor, because you can't have the whole 5 minutes served. So it's similar to the last 2 minutes of the game. Um, Illegal substitution is a penalty shot, right? Because you can't serve the penalty in its entirety. So because you can't serve the five and the team can't get their 3-minute power play, you put 3 minutes up on the clock on the penalty marker, and you get a 3-minute power play. And it's a fascinating one, and it's funny because I had that call in an arena league game. It took a while, and then they announced that that's what's happening. I'm like, great, here we go. And then literally within a week or two, there's a game in the National Lacrosse League where the same thing happens, and the broadcasters had no idea. They're talking about it. They're like, well, what is it? Do you put two up? Do you put five up? What do you do? And the funniest thing was that eventually they put three up on the board, and the play-by-play guy goes, They put three up. Well, we know that's not right. I'm like, oh no, it's absolutely right. NLL roster deadline approaches, you can't make trades, but you can sign street free agents. And I'll tell you, some of these guys could be pretty good pickups for NLL teams to in case of injury or any concerns with the roster to add to the roster. The one guy that jumps out is Jordan Sturris. Um, with Whitby that I talked about a while ago, and he's just playing terrific ball down there. He's been with a few different NLL teams, so yeah, we'll see more of these guys spread around in the summer and again next year in the ALL.
Yeah, and like you said, you never know. Maybe somebody will take a chance on somebody in the NLL. Somebody gets hurt. There's definitely plenty of talent to pick from down there. But let's get into the NLL standings as we look at this. The Firewolves, San Diego, and Toronto sitting up top
They've clinched.
have all clinched. And as we look at this, I don't see Halifax getting knocked out at all out of the top. What are your thoughts on Georgia, though? I mean, they have had some struggles occasionally with the goalie. It's been a bit of an issue. Do you think they're a team that can seriously contend through the playoffs, or do you think it's
Um,
kind of make the playoffs and out in the first round?
I mean, it's hard to say. You never know. Things can get very. Um, Anything can happen in the playoffs, especially the first round when you've got a single game. Um, Georgia, Brett Dobson has been up and down, but boy, can he be awfully good, right? He can be as good as anybody when he's on. So you never know. And they've got Lyle Thompson, and they've got, so many good players. Shane Jackson. They've got Jordan McIntosh leading a very good, underrated defensive group with guys like Casey Tarbell and Adam Wiedemann. They're good. Interesting, Graham Parrow put out a tweet about that there are about 16 million possible combinations of how all the games in the final 4 weeks of the NLL season could play out. And in about 96% of them, I've got the details actually in my musings this week on IL Indoor. So you can go and check that out. I get more into it. But Georgia and Halifax are pretty much in. Like 96% or so of the scenarios play out, have them in the playoffs. At the other end of the standings, Vegas is out, and some of the bottom teams, Vancouver, Colorado, very slim chances of them getting in. New York and Rochester, that's a huge one because they play this weekend and they are sitting at 8 and 9. And whoever wins that game has a great chance to make the playoffs. And whoever doesn't has not nearly as good a chance. And then you're looking at Saskatchewan, Calgary. That's another fascinating one because they are playing a doubleheader, a home and home this weekend. And if one of those teams sweeps, because they're both at 6 and 8, whoever wins those two games has a pretty decent chance to playoffs. The other one's obviously done. If they split, they pretty much take each other out of competition for the playoffs.
Yeah, yeah. I think I don't know. It's going to be very interesting to see how that turns out. I Calgary can do it. I think it all comes down to Del Bianco and what kind of performance they get out of him.
I think they're both good. I think Calgary and Saskatchewan are the two teams not in the playoffs that probably should be more in the mix. They just had a few things happen here and there. Um, Calgary is a plus 10 in goal differential in the season, which is like fourth or fifth in the league. Um, it's it's a little weird actually that they're not in the playoffs. They just the way things have worked out. And it's just things happen sometimes. And
Yeah,
I
Calgary has quietly been good, and you feel like they're a
mhm,
playoff team that's just lost a couple of big games. And
yeah,
honestly, like you look at that one San Diego loss where they scored like 7 goals, and you're like, what
yeah,
happened to the offense? I mean, your defense did their job. They
yeah.
kept them down to 9 goals, but 7 goals,
And most
guys.
of those goals were in transition, weren't they? Of those seven,
Yeah, of the 7, I want to say 3 of them were transition, and the
uh,
one was not even so much the transition is like the unsettled, but it was still like an
yeah,
off the bench play where one of the guys, yeah, no, their
yeah.
offense gets questionable at times.
They are one, but they've got Jesse King and Tyler Pace. They can be very, very good. Those two are great. Both guys can, have to be considered contenders for Canada at the Worlds this year, which is a pretty high level. Like that's above an NLL All Star team if you're in the mix for Canada, right? So I think the interesting thing is that if one of those teams does get in, Calgary in particular is such a problem with Del Bianco that if they get in as the 8th seed, do you want to be playing them in the first round? No. That's the thing about finishing first. You get the 8th team, and sometimes that's a team that's just got on fire and snuck into the playoffs and is as scary as anybody.
Well, in this league, I say it all the time. A hot goalie can get rid
Yeah.
of a lot of problems. All of a sudden,
Yeah.
the problems just vanish. The goalie's on fire and the defense is phenomenal. Just because your goalie's on fire, everybody thinks, wow, they got it figured out. Especially somebody like Del Bianco who starts the offense so
Yeah.
much for them with
Yeah.
getting that
17
transition.
assists this year,
Yeah,
16 assists. It's crazy.
yeah.
It's almost, Greg, as if just the goalie just needs to make those extra 3 or 4 saves, and that's the difference in the game.
100%. I don't know where you heard that from, but he's probably one of the
I don't know.
smartest
It
guys on the
sounds
planet.
like something familiar. Yeah, it sounds very familiar.
Thank you so much as always. We're gonna end on that note. I love it, and it's been a blast. And as this just keeps going down, we're gonna see each other here in a couple of weeks, but we will do this
Hey,
again next week. Thanks so much for everything.
my pleasure.
This will wrap up our NLL show essentially for the week. So thank you so much,
Yeah.
Stamper, and everybody looking to find you on Twitter. It's at StampLax. At Instagram now we are official. It's no longer at StampLax123. It's at Stamp_Lax. So it's just at
Yeah.
StampLax. But that
Yeah. I
makes
got
it
rid of the
easier to.
numbers.
Yeah, and there's also the link in the description to click on the Inside Lacrosse where he goes into so much more depth on so many of these stories along with some other writers and a lot of great things in there. People check it out. And thanks so much for joining us and doing this every week.
Thank you. Love it.